Hey guys, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. All right, let's move over to our next interview, and we'll be looking at minimum wage, the cost of living in states, and the ability of states to pay. My guest is joining me right now, Taiwo Obasan, who is the author of Afroconomist. Hello, Taiwo, and welcome to the program.
Hello, Nancy. Thank you very much for inviting me to the program.
You're welcome. Now, let's get started. States, states, states. Are they the weakest links? Weakest? I don't know about local government now, or perhaps are they a weak link? Let me say that, because now with local government autonomy, local government would also pay. But are they the states? Is there a weak link there? Bearing in mind that many states have still not paid 30,000. According to budget, 15 states have not paid, have not implemented the 30,000 naira. So is it 70K they will pay?
All right. Thank you very much. And I mean, for states, so that for this 70,000, we have been told that 5.3 million Nigerians are expected to benefit from this. And states own 1.3%, 1.3 million people are directly employed by state governments. And those are the people that are expected to, as much as possible, benefit from this. So, I mean, for states, for you to be able to pay a minimum wage, one of the things you have to look out for is the revenue, because the money that you are going to use to pay has to come from somewhere. And so far, within the entire states, only 11 states have enough revenue for them to be able to cover for the new appropriation, for the new minimum wage if it is added to their current appropriation, looking at the FAC, which is the federal allocation that is expected to come from them, and the ITR that they are currently earning. So as much as possible, we would see that if this 70,000 naira is imposed on all states within the federation, not all the states, will be at least 24 states today would not be able to afford the 70,000 naira minimum wage, as the case may be.
So from your analysis, if 24 states would not afford the minimum wage, what is left for them to do? Will they still stick with the 30,000, or do you see some states moving closer to the 70,000? And don't you think it will also make rubbish of the minimum wage law when it comes to pass, if, of course, the National Assembly agrees to the 70K that the President and Labour settled for?
All right, thank you very much. So there are three things to look out for there, and I'll start from the constitutional backing to minimum wage. So part one, subsection 34, right, of the 1999 Constitution puts the right to set minimum wage on the National Assembly. However, that part of the constitution does not cater to the regional differences that we have in Nigeria, and how there is variation in the cost of living across Nigeria and even the revenue of Nigeria, right? And I would give an instance coming starting from even the United States, right, where Nigeria tends to look at for most of their policies. Right, so in United States, despite having just above $7 as the federal minimum wage, right? There are some states that are paying that minimum wage, and there are some states that are paying above that minimum wage. And even in New York, for instance, New York, there are parts of New York that earn between 13 and $15, and there are even some parts of that same New York that earns just $8 per hour for minimum wage. Right. So in a way, we can see that the constitutional backing that we are using today for minimum wage, we have to change it and adopt a much more federal approach to minimum wage, where there will be through federalism, state governments will be able to, as much as possible, set their own minimum wage. So that's the first part to it. The second part to it is, I mean, you have to look at the productivity of each of these states vis-a-vis the cost of labor. So, for instance, if a state has mandated to pay 70,000 for minimum wage, what is the total productivity of those people that have been employed for them to earn that minimum wage? So permit me to some numbers here from my notes. So for instance, I'm going to quote here to say that um, what is currently being generated by each of these states, right? So let me start from Akwa Ibom, Ondo, Abia, Ebonyi, Osun, River, Kwara, Bauchi, Oyo, Kogi, and Kano. As much as possible, the IGR that they are generating for most of, pardon, Kano is not part of that list. The IGR that they are generating today without the federal allocation might not necessarily be able to pay this minimum wage. So that simply means that the productivity of the workers that are working for each of these states, they are not earning enough. So look at this from the point of view of a company. Let's say a state is a company. The company would have to earn revenue for it to be able to pay, for it to be able to pay salaries, right? If it will not run at loss. So if the company is not making enough revenue to pay salaries, what will happen? The company will have to cut costs by either reducing, by either laying off staff, which is what we have seen happen within the private sector and all of that. But in the case of states, right, what necessarily happens is they can't lay off staff because of political gains and political point of view to this situation, right? So what we will have to do is keep these people in, try to pay them the best minimum that they can afford, while still able to, I mean, cater to some other things around their capital expenses and all of that. And borrow money, I mean, to show off like whatever the deficit is. So the question we should ask ourselves is, do we want to mandate all of these states that are not viable enough to keep paying this minimum wage, and rack up a lot of debt, which is not sustainable in the long run? Or do we, as much as possible, want to make these states pay based on their productivity, based on the cost of living in their own states, right? While people, I mean, and it is sustainable in the long run. Because, for instance, the cost of living in Lagos is different from the cost of living in in nearby Osun State, right? And the cost, the idea of Osun State is also different from the. I just want to like the same minimum wage on Osun State, just like you slap on Lagos. So that's like what we need to really, really look out for, so that we don't just put our states in debt, right, as much as possible, and we run into an unsustainable practice for the country.
Should we canvass for different methodologies for the states? Perhaps should the states now adopt like minimum wages that would be adjusted to their own cost of living? And what do I mean? Of course, inflation, we have inflation in different states. Many states do have headline inflation, inflation in their state that is higher than the national inflation rate. So should they begin to calculate that? Wouldn't that also tamper with the law itself nationally, since the National Assembly is in charge of that? That's one. I don't know if we should be giving states solutions this morning. They should be paying for it because of the cuff. I'm just saying the states. Or should we also talk about, okay, we have different regions in the country. Should we be looking at a regional minimum wage adjustment? For example, that Southwest states may say, okay, what is the average inflation rate in the Southwest? Let's calculate according to Southwest, South-South, and all of that. Because there was something the DG of NECA, Organized Private Sector, said yesterday on the show here, Mr. Oyeride. He talked about we need to, look at a modernized way of this minimum wage. Meanwhile, we don't even earn wages in Nigeria. What we earn is salaries, and I don't know why we're still calling it wages. So perhaps this new minimum wage act should be able to look at all of that. So over to you, Taiwo. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I don't know if it's something,
Yes,
but,
yes,
it's just an idea.
yes, I do, and I am a strong advocate for cost of living adjustment being the basis for setting minimum wage. That's one, and cost of living adjustments caters to inflation rates across the board. And again, I'm also a very big advocate of ensuring that we decentralize minimum wage, right? And states set their own minimum wage. So yeah, I'm in Nigeria, based on the last June inflation numbers, 10 states, the top 10 states, right, that their inflation is quite high. We have Akwa Ibom, Ondo, Abia, Ebonyi, Osun State, River
And
State,
those should be there.
Kwara State, yes, Oyo, Kogi, Kano, and Edo State, which the highest is Kano at 37.98%. So that simply means that compared to, say, the likes of Lagos, right? So that means that if you give me 70,000 naira and I'm living in Kano, right? And next month you give me another 70,000 naira and my inflation is higher than, say, the person in Lagos, right? My 70,000 naira would have worth lesser in Kano the following month than for the other person in another state where the inflation rate is quite lower. So why not just automate the minimum wage setting by doing a COLA adjustment? Corporate in the corporate or private sector today, there's COLA adjustment that is done by companies year on year. So why not just automate it state by state? Nigerian Bureau of Statistics from time to time publish these inflation numbers, right, per state. So why can't they just from time to time also predict what the cost of living adjustments should be based on the minimum wage that should happen. So we don't have this jamboree of length of months of dragging between the organized labor and the state government or the federal government arguing on minimum wage, right? We'll just have a calculation the same way we have the CPI calculation, the inflation calculation that is doing state by state, and from time to time we can just look at it, look at the revenue of the state, and just do the sign them into law. Then again, the National Assembly also needs to take it from their own point of view today to as much as possible, create a law, even if they are not going to give that, they are not going to move minimum wage to the concurrent list, which will now be at the ends of the states, the jurisdiction of the state government, right? They should, as much as possible, create work with the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics to ensure the minimum wage legislation is done for in the minimum per regions, right? Or we can also put our entire just like they've done for the federal allocation, right? We can also put all our states, the 36 states, including
Okay.
FCT, into economic brackets. So that's what I believe we should do.
Okay, Taiwo, in just a few seconds, about 30 seconds, with this new minimum wage, when it's being passed into law and when adjusted as the case may be, what do you think will be the impact on inflation in states? In just a few seconds, we'll have to go.
All right. So in the minimum wage today naturally just puts is the same amount that workers were earning in 2019. So there won't be a lot of pull effect on inflation once it is introduced, because the inflation we have in Nigeria is not necessarily like a demand driven inflation, right? It's more of a demand, it's more of a supply pulled inflation. It's not like we have too much money running after
Okay.
goods, as the case may be, right? There are certain things that lead to our own inflation, which food is one of the biggest driver for that. So I believe that we wouldn't really have this 70,000 naira will not have a lot of impact, right,
Okay.
on the inflation, on like what happened in 2019.
Okay, so your analysis is that inflation has already run away than even the minimum wage itself. So inflation don't run, so the minimum wage doesn't even matter because inflation is more than the minimum wage itself. I think I understand what you're saying. So thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for your insights. All right, I've been speaking with Taiwo Obasan, who is the author of Afroconomist, and we've been talking about minimum wage, the state's ability to pay, and of course, the adjustment of cost of living in the states. That's the much we can take today on the program. Thank you all for joining us again. As always, please still stay tuned to the channel. At 2 p.m., Layami Cardoso and other members of the MPC will be briefing the press on the outcome of the two-day policy meeting that started yesterday. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. Bye for now. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content.